Not in my words, not in that way, not in my name, not in my faith, not in my words, not in that way.
Welcome viewers to another edition of A Muslim's Perspective. Today we'll be discussing the situation in India. But first we say praise belongs to Allah. We praise Him and we ask Him for guidance and forgiveness. And we seek protection in Allah from the malice of our own souls and the evil of our actions. Whom Allah guides, no one can lead him astray. And whom He makes astray, no one can lead him back to the right path. I bear witness that there is no other deity but Allah by Himself, no associate to Him, and I bear witness that Muhammad is His servant and messenger. Our guests today are Brother Taha Ghayyur and Sister Naila Saeed. We have met Brother Taha many times, and I will give you a brief reminder of what he's all about. But first, our new guest, Sister Naila Saeed. She is a Vice President of the Canadian Council of Indian Muslims, Professional Immigrants Network Advisory Board she also sits on. She's the Director of Canadian Peace and Unity Foundation, the ex-President of Ansar Foundation, the ex-President of Aligarh Muslim University Alumni Association of Canada, and she is the Chief Executive Officer of Early Years Education System, Child Care Centers. As we know, Brother Taha has been involved in our community here in the GTA and in Canada over the last 25 years with many organizations, and today he is speaking on behalf of Justice for All, which seeks to bring about awareness and of the situation of people who are suffering for human rights violations all over the world, particularly focused on Muslims and Islamophobia and so on and so forth. So, though I am 5 generations removed from India and have never had the opportunity to touch its soil, being Indian is one of the many layers of my self-identity. As a child, I watched and listened as many elders in our Trinidad community demonstrated their love for India by keeping close with their Jahaji Bai and Bahins. Those are the people whom they shared their ship journey, which in some instances lasted 3 months when the steamship line came, and was much longer when it was the sailboats. In Trinidad, the Indians arrived in 1845. Now, they stood together against the tyranny of the British institutional indentured labor system, which literally bounded them to sugarcane estates and other estates. They endured the pain of separation from their beloved family and land, neither hearing a whisper nor feeling the slightest touch from those who nurtured them. So many drowned their broken hearts by turning to alcohol, or waited excitedly for the latest release of an Indian movie. An attachment to India was socialized into us, seeing the depth of yearning of our elders to return. While on a short stay in a Muslim country, I was interrogated by authorities for taking pictures on the street. Repeatedly they asked, "What is your tribe?" Didn't know I had one. Confused by this line of questioning, the answer was repeated: "I'm Canadian, migrated from Trinidad." This was rebuffed as incorrect until the response was given, "Well, my forefathers migrated from India 5 generations ago," which on the face of the officer was an absolute joy and full of exuberance. The officer shouted, "Al-Hindi, Al-Hindi, you are Hindi." Though I cannot claim to have Indian nationality, the world sees me as an Indian. I have no problems with that, even in Muslim lands. Being Indian is an indelible part of my heritage and identity, as well as being Muslim. Being Muslim has not debarred me from having friends who are Hindu, of other faiths, or of no faith at all. One of the few persons who have the key to my house is a Hindu, as I have of his house. He is one of the many inclusive of my primary and high school friends. There is no faith, including Islam, that does not follow the golden rule, the principle of treating others as one wants to be treated. In matters of faith, God admonishes us, humankind, in the Quran in chapter 6, verse 108, and do not abuse whom they call upon besides God, lest they insult God. God in the Quran also advises in chapter 49, verse 13, O mankind, we created you from a single pair of male and female, and made you into nations and tribes, that you may know each other, not that you may despise each other. Faith is a matter that goes beyond political partisanship or vote bank campaigning. It is personal to a person and their eternal salvation. In India today, as in China, as with ISIS, politics is the driving force of programs and genocidal movements. We turn now to our sister Naila. Naila, can you provide our viewers with a summary of the current threat against the 200 million Indian Muslims?
Sure. Thank you, first of all, for making me part of this. It's really an honor to be with Brother Taha and with Brother Aleem. So now, as you have asked, to provide a summary of the current threat against the 200 million Indian Muslims. I know it's going to be very difficult to provide the entire summary of how the Indians they are facing what they are facing in India. Since 2014, there is a increase of injustice, atrocities towards minorities. Muslim communities have faced discrimination in employment, education, and encountered enormous barriers. They are disproportionately the victims of communal violence. Anti-Muslim sentiments have heightened under the leadership of PM Modi, who has pursued a Hindu nationalist agenda. PM Modi is a proponent of a far-right militant ideology called Hindutva, which was invented in 1920 by an all-male vigilant group called the RSS. Its founders corresponded with Adolf Hitler and met with Benito Mussolini in 1929 to model their party among fascist lines. A member of the group assassinated Mahatma Gandhi in 1948. PM Modi has made his party's agenda very clear. He shifted his rhetoric from fighting corruption to generating hate. Muslims in India have been increasingly at risk. Since PM Modi administration first took office, BJP leaders have repeatedly made Hindu nationalist and anti-Muslim remarks openly in their speeches and interviews. These have at times encouraged and even incited violent attack by party supporters who believe they have political protection and approval. They have no fear at all. They have beaten Muslims men for dating Hindu women. Mobs affiliated to the BJP have since 2015 killed and injured across so many members, scores of members of religious minorities. Amid rumors that they traded or killed cows for beef. Even government policies has reflected bias against Muslims. Myself being from UP, Uttar Pradesh, that's the most Muslim population in India. It's the largest populated area, the states in India, that I have seen those kinds of incidents myself. And being from Uttar Pradesh, my family have gone through a lot of those kinds of where they have gone through the injustice that they have seen, that they have faced themselves.
You speak particularly of Uttar Pradesh, and ironically, that's where my ancestors came from, a place near Azamgarh. With 80% of Uttar Pradesh being Hindus, why does the current ruling dispensation seek to sow fear of the minority faiths and caste communities?
It is very simple, Brother Aleem, simply to get the political gain, making sure people are engaged in these type of activities rather than focusing on the real issues like poverty, corruption, unemployment, women's safety, education. This is just to deviate from the real issues. Under Modi, India hits its highest rate of unemployment in 45 years. Authorities in India have adopted law and policies that systematically discriminate against Muslims. The Hindu and Muslim divide has been used to gain electoral benefits by impressing upon the people of extremist ideologies.
The fear that the 20% that are not Hindus, because they seem to be a distraction to the real issues, and they can buy into that fear that they are unemployed because it's the Muslims' fault, or that they can't get proper health care because it's the Muslims' fault, or that they can't get a wife because it's the Muslim fault, or that the Muslims are marrying too many. It reminds me that in the days of plenty, in the 60s and 70s and 80s, Western politicians basically sold the population dreams in order to win elections. Now it seems that the tide has turned, and now they are selling fear in order to win elections, fear of the other. Reports indicate that it's not only Muslims are being targeted for hate speech and genocidal threats. Is that the situation on the ground?
That's right, absolutely right. Not only Muslims, but Christians and Sikhs have been targeted as well in India to gain political mileage, to polarize the voters. I am right now seeing myself because now you must have known that UP election, the Uttar Pradesh election has been declared, and you can see it how in the ground the BJP government is working and how they are trying to polarize the voters. Uh, as being a secular state where they're supposed to remain indifferent to individual beliefs and to ensure that every individual enjoys the religion freedom in personal life. But practically, the nature and character of secularism changes in different contexts. India, being a predominantly Hindu and fundamentally religious society, has its own flavor of secularism. The Constitution of India, on one hand, assured personal freedoms and declares the state as secular, but on the other hand, carries contradictory indication of anti-religious objectives and prominence of Hinduism, and has been accused of being the proponents of hatred and discrimination towards the religious minorities.
Can we equate this political philosophy or ideology that you speak about, Hindutva and Hinduism? Is it similar to what ISIS has done to Islam? In the sense that they have
Exactly.
they have interpreted the Islamic faith as an extreme political ideology.
You're absolutely right. Exactly. That's what they're doing. Right now, they're just trying to get the political benefit out of it, and they are creating a very wrong image in front of the public. As you know, the media is so biased. The entire journalism here, it has gone so much down for the decades. Like, there has been a control of press and media. There has been a decline in journalism in India. Media has been severely criticized for being partial and loyal towards the ruling party. So government has suppressed the freedom of expression. The government is projecting the minorities in a totally different way. What how they are putting entire wrong image in front of the common people. The government is creating an air of fear where people are frightened to stand for their rights. So it is all the projection. It is all the image that they have been created in the on the ground level.
Noticed any change in the dynamics you would have had with your neighbors who may be of Hindu or other faiths in terms of their treatment of yourself? I mean, ordinary relationships that exist in any society. Have you noticed any change towards yourself or your relatives?
I have seen a drastic change. 25 years where I left the India 25 years back when we moved to Canada, India was entirely different. We used to study in a convent school. We did our entire high school from elementary to high school in a convent school where majority of the students were Hindus. Out of the 65 students in the class, we were three Muslims only, two girls and one boy. And we never had any kind of like that we belong to a minority or we belong to a different religion. We never got that kind of a sense because it was so much uh, of the community feeling that we were celebrating each other festivals. We had so much freedom to go to each other's house. There was fear at all at that time. But now within that 10-15 years, you can see the kind of language now they are using in even in our own school groups that we have in the WhatsApp, how they have brainwashed, how they have corrupted the entire environment. It has been really heartbreaking to see that our own colleagues, our own classmates whom we have grown up has changed so much. It is really, really heartbreaking to see that things have changed so much that they are the kind of language they are using, the way they look at us. Even if we talk, we need to think twice, thrice what we are speaking now. Are they going to quote us differently? Are they going to think us differently? Are they going to take our so the things have changed entirely on the ground level. It's not the way we used to live in India with neighbors, with all like celebrating all the religion together. Myself belonging to a political party where everybody used to welcome everyone, and we have that kind of an environment that we were celebrating every festival so openly, and we had no fear at all. Now things have entirely changed.
Isn't that social exchange anymore? Or it is curtailed significantly?
It is for sure. It is. Now people have a lot of fear of mingling around, going to each other's house. The safety has become a big issue here. It is not that like how it used to be. It is now programs like are a special clause of rights. Like that's what I can quote here. When it's no longer a simple like clash, when there are a difference of opinion between two groups or there's a clash, it's no more a clash now between two mobs or group. Instead, the because the people are getting tagged, people are getting they have been like you can say like they have been targeted because being in a minority group, they anything happens in the society, it's the people take it as a religious perspective, no more as a humanity ground. So nothing in India is on the humanity ground. Any incident happen, people always check it. Okay, which group is involved? Which religion is involved?
The parameters, no, it's not, it's essentially the morality is my murderer is better than your murderer because he's my murderer. Not that murder in itself is incorrect or wrong, absolutely wrong. Is that the morality?
Yes, I would say that's right. Now it's more of targeting the religion and proving themselves that majority is right. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, okay.
The issue you mentioned earlier on that some of your relatives face attacks and so on. Can you share some of the incidents that you have observed or know about in your immediate context?
Sure. The most vulnerable Muslim population are in BJP ruled states. So, because the rule of the police is, can can you hear me? Because I feel like I'm echoing. Hello? Hello? Hello?
Yes, we are hearing you.
Oh, okay, that's right. Okay. So the most vulnerable Muslim population are in BJP ruled states because the role of the police is critical, as the police comes under the state government. So BJP governments in various states of India push the police against the Muslims. They know the authority structure is very clear. So the danger to Muslim minorities in BJP ruled states is grave. UP, the Uttar Pradesh, is India's largest state with a population of 200 million. Seems particularly vulnerable. So Muslim comprise about 18% of the population there, and they are spread out all over the state. There was a big riot in Muzaffarnagar where I belong to in 2013. 2013. For example, the police was nowhere in those riots. They were nowhere to be seen. My own family was targeted. My own house was burned, and they were targeted. It was so much that my family had to run away, and there were so many charges was laid down, and it was really a nightmare for me to see my family what they were going through over there. So UP is also ruled by a CM, the Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath, whose anti-Muslim prejudice and fervor is well known and has been openly displayed. So these kind of environment that's been created in UP, and the hatred on the ground level, we have already faced, my family has faced, and I have seen that how people are going through and the facing the challenges in day-to-day lives.
So you're saying that the police and the courts are infected or influenced by this ecosystem that the BJP has created in terms of its hate speech and its programs and so on. So the law enforcement is absent, you're saying, when the victims are Muslims? Is that a general rule, or is it?
Absolutely. No, it's absolutely. The police is siding with one group, either by looking away or by abetting or sometimes even directly participating in the violence. The key difference is the live in the police, how they are projecting themselves, how they are participating openly. So that's the fear in the public, because no more the administration, no more the police is fair anymore.
So a Muslim who is a victim or a Christian who is a victim of crime will seek not to report it?
That's the best they can do, because they know if they are going to do that, they will be targeted and they will be falsely have the cases against them, and that's how they have been targeted and trapped. So everybody has a fear because there is so lawlessness in the ground that anybody can be charged, and they can without any ground, they can put them in the jail. They don't have to create a case against them.
So you can end up spending years, if not decades, in jail waiting for a charge to be laid, much less a trial.
Absolutely, and there are examples on the ground with the journalists who have spoken on the ground, and there are people who have come forward against, and if they have come forward to raise their voice against injustice. You have not found their bodies, or they are just in the jail for years.
Wow. We will take a short break and then return to this very interesting interview. Until we are back, peace out.
Not in my faith, not in my words, not in that way.
Welcome back, viewers, and we are in discussion with Sister Naila, Saeed, and Brother Taha Ghayyur on the situation in India. But first, Sister Naila has been describing to us the environment in India, and we will continue now with her. You mentioned the Indian media. What is the situation? I mean, is the Indian media so dependent on governments for revenue that they're clearly biased and communal in their reporting?
Absolutely, absolutely. They are. There has been a decline in journalism in India for decades. You open any channel, you will not see the reality. You will not see the real issues. You will not see what's going on the ground. What you can hear is the good things about the ruling party, good things about the government. The only channels do right now is to praise the government. Nothing else. Absolutely. Government has suppressed the freedom of expression. It's entirely died out.
So what sort of avenues, if any, are open to Indian Muslims to change this situation? The political scenario seems to be split between so many different political parties that the strength of the BJP seems to be as a consequence of the split in the opposition. Is there any hope for a change in government so that government policies can be rebalanced?
I wish there is a hope, and we are working towards it. But it's the only hope is when I feel like international organizations or international bodies or international pressure can be built up on India, because internally there is no hope how the government has been working, how the ground level situation is. It is very, very bad. It's extremely bad, and especially in northern India, how the people have been targeted, how the journalists have been targeted, how the people who have raised their voice have been targeted, how the students have been targeted, how the minorities leaders have been targeted. There is no hope because there is no law anymore. There is no body that can support, that can stand with justice. So there is no justice until and unless the international bodies, international pressure has been built up on India. That's the only way out right now that we can see, and there is a hope that we can get some kind of a change in India if the international organizations, internationally, the different countries build up pressure on the Indian government to maintain the secularism in India, to maintain what the India stands for. So that's the only hope left right now.
From the actions of the politicians internally and the suppression of real India in terms of the propaganda type journalism that's exercised, that the government within India has no shame and its supporters have no shame, and India is a shaming culture. Do you think the international community speaking out can shame India to respect the human rights of minorities when they seem to be so convinced that the Israeli model is what they need to follow? That the Jews have their promised homeland in Palestine, and therefore Hindus have their own homeland in India, and everybody else needs to be excluded?
Yeah, you're right. if they are going to be ashamed what they have been doing, how inhuman acts have been placed on the ground level. But when internationally they will be pressurized and their economy is going to hit, and the businesses and the other international pressure will be built up, when they will see that the corporate level or the economy of India is getting hit, at that point they might have to pull themselves back to revise their policies in terms of the humanities, or getting ashamed to think about their behavior. That's not the possibility that we are looking at. But in terms of from the UNO or the Human Rights Association, that can put pressure on Indian government, and then see how internationally the countries are boycotting them. So that fear might make India change their policies.
When I was in high school in Little Trinidad and Tobago, which is just like 1,800 square miles, there was a moment in which the statue of Mahatma Gandhi was placed in the city center. And you feel so proud that a man of that stature, nonviolence and accommodating to all, could be respected in a small, tiny island in this part of the world. And it's really heartbreaking to see that even his contribution to the development of India and its independence struggle is now being flipped upside down, and that suddenly he's a villain and the one who killed him is a hero. It's really a tragedy that India seems to be turning inside out.
Absolutely. The ideology of the government has created a ground level situation where instruction do not have to come from the top. The so-called agents devise their own strategies and think that by acting in a bigoted manner, by attacking Muslims, they could rise in the political hierarchy. So things have on the ground entirely changed. So the incentive structure that gets created from the top begins to acquire a logic of its own and activates stormtroopers, lower level functionaries on the ground who try to interpret what the party leaders might appreciate or be pleased by.
So the more outrage you can generate, the more attention you can receive from those in power, and you can win your favors that way.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Subhanallah. Might we turn now to Brother Taha? Brother Taha, do you have any questions that you'd like to get from Sister Naila?
Well, I mean, I've known, of course, my dear sister Naila, for quite some time, and I'm aware of course, what's happening for, in that part of the world, thanks to the wonderful work that herself and others in the community, in the Indian Muslim community, especially in Canada, are doing. I guess my question, or only question for now, would be to find out from you, how are you and the Indian Muslim community that you're connected with dealing with the recent calls to genocide, as we know, in Uttarakhand and literally the top religious leadership of RSS and linked to BJP that were called about 3 weeks ago in India.
So, Brother Taha, what we are doing right now in India, that we are trying to connect with the youth on the ground level, in small villages. We are trying to tell them to be patient, not to react. What we have seen, that when they are facing these kinds of challenges, where the leaders of the majority party is openly saying that the Muslims should be killed 15 lakhs, thousands. They are openly quoting the numbers, and it's natural that our youth gets emotional, and their reactions comes out, and that's what the government is waiting for, to the Muslims to react, so they can act and they can take their actions, and youth can suffer. So this is all the strategies, this is all the planning of the RSS, how they're trapping the Muslims, the youth, by provoking them. For us is to make them understand how our goal is not short term, our goal is long term, how we have to right now be patient, we have to make our community strong by educating them, making our youth, our children strong, our community strong, because there are a lot of issues in our community itself. First of all, the poverty, illiteracy, unemployment. We are so weak in different grounds that we are not in a position to fight back, to stand for our rights. And on the top of it, we lack the Muslim leadership. So there are a lot of issues on the ground, Brother Taha, that we are trying to educate and counsel our youth and trying to unite them and see what is the best for them, short term and the long term goal, and how and when to react.
Make it easy for you and everybody.
Inshallah. But Taha, can you provide some details on the campaign Justice for All is undertaken with respect to the plight of Indian Muslims?
Sure. I mean, I think it's important for us to recognize the background of why, we are calling for an immediate action and work on this issue of Indian Muslims in particular. Sister Naila has provided a very good picture of what is happening on the ground. Islamophobia in India is now a mainstream movement led by BJP government-backed Hindutva leaders and organizations. Islamophobia is no longer a fringe element in India; has become a state-manufactured ideology. And what we know, based on what we just touched upon as well, in particular, between December 17th and 19th of 2021, just 3 weeks or 4 weeks ago, several prominent religious leaders of Hindutva organizations convened at India's pilgrimage city, Haridwar, that you may be aware of, and they actually had a large convention, Dharma Sansad as they call it, or Hindu religious parliament, where Hindu monks and religious leaders they openly declared their plan of action, genocidal plan. They called for killing of 2 million Muslims in India, to force 200 million Muslims out of India, just like Burma did. And that's what they're saying. Let's follow the example of Burma against Rohingya Muslims, as we know. And they've announced a 10 million rupees reward for Hindus willing to commit suicide bombers, basically, to achieve this goal. They're openly asking Hindu youth to actually take up arms and start killing. That's basically, that's literally genocide. Now, this is a very clear indication of the state of human rights that has been declining very fast over the last few years, especially ever since the new BJP government was re-elected. And we know that India is the only country in the world for which there are 2 current genocide alerts issued by Genocide Watch, which considers human rights abuses in the occupied Kashmir and in Assam region to be so alarming. That with this new call of genocide, Genocide Watch is saying that we are now at, or India is now at 8th level or stage of genocide, literally one step away from actually all-out extermination of Indian Muslims. Amnesty International was forced to shut down in September 2020. We know that Delhi Human Rights Commission offices and its chair's offices were actually attacked and raided. And we also know that similar acts are happening, or attacks happening against journalists, which is why, for instance, the Reporters Without Borders has rated India as 142nd in the world. It's lower than Myanmar, which committed genocide under Rohingya, against Rohingya. So that being said, in all of this, now we are talking about a state of emergency. So this campaign that we are calling for right now has a few goals, some long-term, some short-term. But what we want to achieve essentially is to ensure that the Indian government ends its ongoing anti-Muslim violence led by BJP government-backed nationalists, Hindutva leaders, and hold its perpetrators accountable, and that it respects its human rights of its own minorities. We want to see that Indian government to reverse discriminatory citizenship laws like CAA and NRC that impact Indian Muslims in particular, and other minorities as well, very directly, in a very in a way that actually it really it causes basically a not only a serious issue of concern, but actually existential threat for them. And we want to make sure that the Canadian government plays an active role as a global leader to ensure that it proactively and categorically speaks out against injustices and calls for genocide in India, which and unfortunately, as we know, in Canadian government has been very silent on this, and to ensure that it does not re-engage in any bilateral discussions or contracts, essentially for economic purposes or defense or otherwise with India, unless India ensures that it will protect its human rights of its own minorities.
Well, Taha, you mentioned the shutting of the Amnesty International offices and other human rights bodies, and basically the denigration of journalists and the jailing of independent journalists. It seems to follow a pattern that India, is part of its long-term strategy is to basically blind the world to an upcoming event that they have planned in terms of more further action against Muslims. And that the world will not have the primacy of being on the spot to report what they are seeing, to blind us to it, essentially.
Absolutely. Most of the videos that you see or images that you see of attacks against Muslims or Dalits or Christians are coming from citizen journalists, essentially, or you and I with their cell phones on, essentially. No human rights organization is able to report anything, and common journalists are not allowed to actually report on any of such crimes. This is really unfortunate.
What impact are you having so far with the Canadian government? Are they responsive? Are they basically looking for, take it to the side room and discuss it in whispers, or are they going to confront this issue?
It's a good question. I mean, to be honest, the response has been actually pretty disappointing, if any. Right now, the reaction among policymakers has been very lukewarm. No one wants to take on India. There's a lot of ignorance. Most Canadians, and of course our politicians included, only know India for yoga or exotic, culinary delights, or Gandhi's non-violence and Taj Mahal and Bollywood. That's the soft image that India has been hiding behind for decades.
Or they have a vote bank here. Or they have a vote bank of Indian. Taha?
I couldn't hear part of what you said.
I said the politicians are also hiding behind the fact that they need to woo the voters in Canada of Indian background as well. So they probably be afraid that they break that fabric.
Of course, that lobby is strong and that is there. And this is why, of course, politicians are not interested. Another reason being, of course, that India strategically, Canada, now that it has taken a stronger and harsher stand against China because of its human rights of Uyghur people, Canada is opening its arms and to essentially re-engage with India on economic and trade, agreements. And this is another reason why, of course, a lot of politicians are reluctant. That being said, of course, Canadians and Canadian Muslims in particular, Indian Muslims, Canadian Muslims of Indian origin, you can see that while there's a lot of anxiety, it has also energized many of them for action. Many are mobilizing to educate and advocate. It's going to be a long game. It's not a short game. It's not a short-term thing. For instance, we have a letter writing campaign to the Prime Minister that has garnered, without much even publicity, over 5,000 letters that have been submitted through that campaign. So you can see that there's a lot more traction now than there was, let's say, even a few months back. There's a lot more coalition building happening, and a lot more Canadian Muslims are willing to speak out and actually even volunteer for this cause.
Let me ask you a simple question. Do you have to be Muslims to campaign for the human rights of minorities in India?
Of course not. It is not a Muslim cause, and it's not just an Indian Muslim issue. There are several other minorities, as I mentioned earlier, being persecuted under the BJP and Modi government, including Christians, Sikhs, and Dalits, who are considered the lower caste in India. And this is a humanitarian issue at the end. Every Canadian should be alarmed. As Dr. Greg Stanton, the president of Genocide Watch, recently said at one of our leadership briefings called by Justice for All, just like 5 days ago, he said that we should be crying emergency genocide alert. Everyone must be alarmed. Imagine an existential threat to a population of that is 5 times the population of Canada. That could be exterminated and eliminated as a result of this slow genocide that has just begun. And this is why 200 million Muslims in India, of course, are living in a state of terror. That should concern every Canadian and everybody here in this part of the world.
And that's why it's so very important that Islamophobia as an issue needs to be raised, because there's just one word that needs to be used and everybody stays silent. They are terrorists. Mm-hmm. And then everybody goes silent, because yes, nobody likes a terrorist. I don't like a terrorist, but to be labeled one, it's people then have doubts about really the genuineness of the actions of someone. And Sister Naila alluded to this when she said she's, they're trying to counsel the youth in terms of their reaction to this provocation that is occurring, that they are waiting for some triggering event to start their program against Muslims. Absolutely.
It is the same playbook by genociders all over the world. Same playbook.
And they seem at its roots, as she said earlier on in the interview, to be grounded in those who are well versed in genocidal programs, being the Nazis in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s.
Absolutely, she's correct.
Subhanallah. Brother Taha, it's always good to have you on, and it's very informative every time we do. The case of Islamophobia is acted out in many places in the world, whether it's here in Canada, in Quebec and Bill 21, or we're talking about China, or we're speaking about India, or we're speaking about the United States. Islamophobia drives, it's an industry that's driving hatred for Muslims, and all we seek to do is to live the life, a complete life, seeking to, what human beings seek, in this world. To be able to worship, to be able to work, to be able to provide for your families, that's basically it. To travel this journey just like anyone else. We also see in the Middle East, constant warfare by Muslims on Muslims and by inside Muslim agents against, being the agents of foreign powers, taking action against other Muslims. I mean, it's really, we seem to be targeted regardless of where we are. And all we say is that we worship one God, we are one humanity, let's take care of each other.
That's correct.
Sister Naila, thank you very much for facilitating this interview, and we wish you the best and the community, and anything that we can do. As we said, we love India. I love my India, and we would like to see this certainly change, and the condition of Indian Muslims, and whether they be in whichever state of India or Kashmir or in China or in the Middle East, wherever Muslims are, that our conditions do turn around, and that people see us for who we are, really, as ethical human beings, just seeking to live the fullness of our life in peace and to promote peace amongst all. Thank you very much.
As you conclude, if
Thank
I
you.
may just request
Sure.
for our audience to make sure that we take some action. And all I'm going to request is to ensure that you do three things. One is to educate, number two is to advocate, and number three is to donate. These are three things every one of us can do, regardless of who you are. And start by speaking out and making noise about it. Talk to your MPs, talk to your even write a letter to your prime minister and demand for him and them to break their silence to begin with. Then we can talk about the other actions, and to donate. So to be able to do all that, make sure you check out www.justiceforallcanada.org. Check out the Save India campaign, because it may be too late if you do not act.
Indeed. Sister Naila, any final words?
We appreciate Brother Taha and Justice for All for standing for the rights of minorities, for doing what's the need of the hour, and they have been supporting a lot, and they have come out very loud and clear what's been on the ground for India. And so far, we have seen no organization that take our issues, that took so far our issues. We really appreciate Justice for All for this, and hopefully we'll definitely try to come up with more concrete ideas to build up some pressure on the government. Right now on the ground, we are trying to generate some kind of a unity among Muslims, and to counsel and to educate them to use their vote wisely. But thank you so much for Brother Taha and Justice for All for collaborating with us. Thank you.
Of course, it's an absolute pleasure, and we are looking forward to your leadership and collaboration, of course, Sister Naila and CCIM.
Here at in Muslim Perspectives, if you need to have a voice in the media, for whatever it's worth, we are always open to having you back on. Thank you very much. Until next time, peace out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Not in my name.